I have been studying feminism as an outsider to that ideology for many years, and the following has become clear to me, as I'm sure it is obvious to many of you. If you are not a misogynist, it is the goal of modern feminism to turn you into a misogynist. And they are not fucking around. This is where feminists put on their A game. You might not hate women. You certainly were not born with hatred in your heart, and if you've managed to reach adulthood without a towering contempt for the female sex, feminists will change that. They will not rest until you hate women. Now, in contrast to men, women, of course, cannot be sexist. The argument is that sexism is not simply prejudice, stereotyping, and discrimination on the basis of sex. According to feminists, sexism is prejudice combined with power. And because women apparently lack the institutional power that men have, they can't be sexist. Now, if we are to accept that women lack institutional power, we must also accept the claim that sexism does not exist without the added ingredient of power to complement the bigotry of prejudice and negative stereotyping. Unfortunately, even this redefinition is nonsense. However, the claim that women lack institutional power, even posited as the second necessary ingredient to constitute feminist-defined sexism, is based on a factually false claim. What's false? Well, the idea that women lack institutional power. They are 55 to 65% of registered voters. Women control most of the spending of disposable income, regardless of who earns the money. Women also control almost all of children's early development, shaping the minds of nearly everyone in each generation of society. Women also dominate elementary school education, dominating children during their formative years. Women further control the family courts, and are catered to by modern entertainment media, and the post-secondary educational climate as well. Women also dominate the human resources departments of most medium and large corporations, and are enshrined as a protected class in national and international human rights law. Women even have an entire department of the United Nations devoted to their interests, but apparently women lack political, social, financial, and institutional power. And the claim, though one that women lack institutional power, and that sexism does not exist without the added power component, is used to justify rampant, blatant, overt, over-the-top sexism against you if you're a man, and sexism of such naked character that's impossible to distinguish from parody by outsiders. And if that definition doesn't insult your intelligence and sicken you, then being told you are a sexist pig because you smiled while also being male is sure to have you reaching for your in-flight puke bag. The project to cultivate your hatred of women is where feminists really do roll out their A game. Of course, the dictionary says that feminism is nothing more and nothing less than the movement seeking equality for women. Not, I note, equality between men and women, no, just equality for women, and they so far have not been clever enough to cover up that little reveal either. Pay no attention to the legal activists working their little ovaries to the bone to legalize the murder of men by women. Pay no attention to the lies of the domestic violence campaigners pretending that domestic violence is not reciprocal, and continuously hammering the public with endless reiterations of the slogan, violence against women. The guy with defensive slash marks on his hands, he must have said something to make her attack him. He probably deserved it. Deserved it. Deserved it. Those wounds on his hands and forearms, he deserved those. Fuck him. And the right to live without fear of somebody smaller than him, who he is afraid to even defend himself from, he deserved it. Are you sick yet? Are you angry? Do you hate women yet? Because this is all on their behalf, and so far they, in large part, are not opposing it. Oh yes, I know. I heard Katy Perry and Kaylee Cuoco, however you pronounce that last name, have both said they are not feminists. At least as public figures, they've made it clear that the Big F brand name isn't going to increase their take-home pay, and feminists, for their part, have executed public shaming campaigns against these cultivated entertainer-slash-personas. But celebrity millionaire actress and United Nations feminist ambassador Emma Watson has now reiterated the call for men to put women above themselves and has cited the multiply debunked wage gap myth as the reason for men's participation in the gender ideology that hates men, because of a faked difference in women's income from the mouth of a millionaire actress. Get on your knees and serve your betters, boys, because Hermione said so. Are you insulted yet? Even after the UN Women's Goodwill Ambassador admitted that feminism was synonymous with the hatred of men, and still in the same speech before the UN called on men to put themselves last and women first. And apparently, if you do put women first by holding open doors or practicing chivalry or even just smiling, you are as much of a sexist as somebody who actively denigrates and disparages women. This is a conclusion published in Canada's National Post, in the UK Telegraph, in the Daily Mail, in several other social science publications, as well as in the online satire magazine The Onion, all in the same week. So if you are male and you're a sexist bigot, well, then you're a sexist bigot. Also, though, if you're male and you're not a sexist bigot, well, sorry, you're still a sexist bigot. And even if you are so emotionally well-balanced that you are truly indifferent to women, if you're male, you're probably also a sexist bigot. Of course, there is nothing quite like an open-ended and non-stop public campaign of accusation to drive a climate of dislike for those espousing it. And if you disagree with feminism, then you certainly must hate women. Right? I told you they're not fucking around, didn't I? The goal of feminism is to cultivate your hatred of women, and they will do it while telling you blandly that it's all just about equality, stupid. Can't you read what it says in the dictionary, stupid? How about sex? You know, one of the basic needs that all humans share? Well, if you're male, you're not just doing it wrong, you're likely doing it so badly wrong that your physical expression of affection and intimacy is being redefined as a violent crime and you as a criminal offender. Affirmative consent is a legal standard being adopted now all over North America, which decrees that sex without ongoing, repeated, and unambiguous repeated statements of consent is not consensual sex at all, but rape. And since in the real world, adults having mutually consensual sex who are not mentally deranged by social justice programming use instead body language, nonverbal cues, and indirect communication in their sexual encounters, this means that without that ridiculous mood-killing pantomime of Dora the Explorer-style Mother May I kabuki dancing, everybody in the history of the world who bumped their fluffy bits together was either raping or being raped. If you're not sure which one you are, rapist or rape victim, just check in your pants and see if you have a penis, rapist. And this isn't just a fucktarded social standard being adopted by the mental defectives calling themselves social justice warriors. This is manifesting in law. And according to one political proponent of this legal fuckery, one of the best features of the legal standard of affirmative consent is that there is no way to actually establish that consent exists in a sexual encounter. Yes, that's apparently on the plus side. That if you are going to plug and play, you're going to do it under the threat of imprisonment, under the threat of your life's destruction and possibly death, based on the whim and the mood of whoever you might or might not have hooked up with. But only if you're male, obviously, because although women can and occasionally do force, threaten, and coerce sex from men, that's not rape because men can't be raped. Oh yeah, and if you're aware of all this and you decide rationally to just not get involved with women because it's a minefield of vicious mindfuckery, then you're a pussy. You're not a rational, self-possessed man. No, you're just a little bitch, according to the very few women who've even bothered to comment on any of this. Do you hate women yet? Because they are not done with you unless or until you hate them. And I am not even opposed to this. In fact, I encourage it to continue. I support feminists in their program. I wish them great success in their ongoing project to cultivate and to amplify your hatred of women. They want you to hate women, and I want them to succeed in cultivating that hatred in you. Because rationality and logic and reason is clearly not going to work. There is a social movement which has, for more than a century, been repeatedly pointing out a pattern of systematic injustice, marginalization, and purposeful dehumanization of men. That is to say, dehumanization of you. And this social movement has used logic and evidence and carefully sourced stats and appeals to higher reason and compassion as its principal strategies. And it has succeeded only in cultivating public contempt for its campaigners. Almost nobody is waking up to a rational rejection of social and legal standards that dehumanize men, although everybody knows about the realities like the destruction of males in the family courts or the male suicide rate, which quadruples that of females. They don't give a fuck. Not even men care, as long as it's not themselves on the chopping block. Now, as an experiment, just raise your hand if you have a male relative who has killed himself. And now, put your hand back down if you have a female relative who did the same. Most of you will still have your hands up. The 19th century philosopher and historian Ernest Belford Bax wrote extensively on what he called the legal subjugation of men. Bax was both an entertaining and a popular author of his time, who, while he was widely read, affected no significant change. And today, the most widely read modern organ addressing the same issues now reruns many of Ernest Belford Bax's articles, demonstrating they believe the historical validity of the problems still left unsolved. Canadian Senator Ann Cools, the longest-serving Canadian senator and the founder of the country's first women's shelter, speaks frequently on issues affecting men in the Canadian Senate, and when she does, she is applauded by her colleagues in the Senate, and then they vote against her. Because just like the readership of Belford Bax 100 years ago, it's all very interesting, it's all very entertaining, but nobody is actually moved to lift a finger to change anything because women who benefit from the use of men will not be inconvenienced. Nobody is unaware that men die earlier. Nobody is unaware that men lack basic civil rights, such as reproductive self-determination. That's the right to not finance a woman's unilateral decision to use his sperm and wallet. Nobody is unaware of the 4-to-1 suicide rate. Nobody is unaware that infant boys are routinely mutilated, which is a trauma resulting in lifelong damage to their cognitive function. Nobody's unaware that law increasingly degrades the civil rights of men, pushing them further into the status of a social underclass. But neither men nor women will respond to any of this knowledge with rational rejection of the destructive cultural and legal conventions comprising what we call society. How stupid do we have to be, republishing Ernest Belford Bax a century later, or watching a senior senator applauded and then regularly casually voted down, and we learn nothing from that lesson? Reason can occasionally move an individual, but it will have no impact on a society. A person can be rational, people, in the plural, are not. So I support feminism in their real but unacknowledged project. It is the goal that gender ideology and movement is actually serious about and making progress towards. The goal of feminism is to drive men towards hatred of women. And when men hate women they have previously always served, then men might finally act to protect themselves from women. And those of you MRAs, MGTOWs, and others who actively hate women, you are feminism's success stories. I thank you all for your very kind attention, and, as always, have a lovely day.